6 na taon pagkatapos na pinatay ni US serviceman Joseph Pemberton, si Jennifer Laude, malaya na siya and officially he's deported from the Philippines. So pwede na bumalik sa United States si Joseph Pemberton, and legally speaking, this chapter is over. But it raises bigger political and legal and strategic questions about our relationship with the United States, and specifically it has raised the issue of special treatment of American servicemen when they visit the country for military exercises, and by extension, yung ating soberania. So many are saying it's ironic for President Duterte, who has touted his independent foreign policy and lambasted the United States for interfering in domestic affairs, to somehow aid this kind of special treatment for American servicemen. And ang concern ng maraming critics is that this might set a very dangerous precedence in the future if nagkaroon na naman ng abuso by American servicemen in the Philippines, which by the way is far from isolated. Nonetheless, the Armed Forces of the Philippines is arguing that the Pemberton case and his early release is an isolated case to begin with, and it does not reflect on the true nature of our strategic and military relationship with the United States. On his part, Joseph Scott Pemberton has made it clear that he wishes he had the words to express the death of his sorrow and regret. Ayon sa kanya, to the family of Miss Jennifer Laude, he extends his most sincere sympathy for the pain he caused. Throughout his imprisonment over the past 5 years, he has contemplated the many errors in his ways, and he is asking for the forgiveness of Jennifer Laude family. At extremely grateful daw siya for the act of compassion of President Duterte. And Pemberton actually thanked President Duterte for his extreme act of compassion. So compassionate si President Duterte for convicted murderers like Pemberton. The Laude family responded by saying, "I naman sa Laude family lawyer Virgie Suarez, may he, Pemberton, find peace of mind, hoping he has learned from all this the value of life and dignity, regardless of gender and nationality. Jennifer's case has ended, but not the poverty and struggle borne by the administration's incompetence." Of course, the Laude family's lawyer was referring to the handling of the COVID-19 crisis by the government, and of course, broader concerns with the competence and conduct of President Duterte. But if you look at the case of Pemberton, many red flags have been raised regarding the issue of special treatment. First of all, Pemberton was found guilty of homicide, which was a lesser sentence than what many expected for the murder. And moreover, he served his term in a special facility inside the Philippine military headquarters, more or less under the jurisdiction of Americans, a clear case of a special treatment. And he was released quite early in his conviction time based on so-called good conduct time allowance credits. Now, this issue is very, very important because it reflects on the nature of our relationship with the United States. Huwag natin kalimutan, the United States remains as our sole treaty ally, our most important strategic partner, and one of our top economic and aid sources. And according to data, especially by the US Department of Defense, we have had more joint military activities with the United States under President Duterte. Ayon sa Indo-Pacific Strategy Report by the US Department of Defense last year, we have 280 bilateral defense activities planned with the Philippines in 2019, and the Philippines hosts the most bilateral exercises in the US Indo-Pacific Command Area of Responsibility. So ironically, under President Duterte, US-Philippine defense relationship have been even more extensive than in the past, close to 300 joint military activities last year alone. And that's more than any other country in the Indo-Pacific. Now, the Bureau of Immigration said that Pemberton was successfully deported from the Philippines last Sunday morning, and that his release was by virtue of an absolute pardon given by the President of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. But there's serious debates whether the idea that he was released for good conduct had any kind of legal basis. The Armed Forces of the Philippines maintains that when it comes to this case, it does not reflect on the nature of our relationship with the United States. Ayon sa AFP spokesman Major General Edgar Arevalo, the incident that involved Pemberton is an isolated case that does not embody the totality or the intent of training with our American counterparts, or with the armed forces of other countries for that matter. But there could be one or two from among the many training participants who deviate from the established norms and desired conduct. The recent incident tells everyone that no one is above the law and that for any misconduct or transgressions, they will be punished accordingly. But wasn't Pemberton actually released ahead of time on questionable legal grounds? After all, the 2012 GCTA law was never agreed upon in the 1999 Visiting Forces Agreement, and the Philippine Supreme Court made it clear The rule in international law is that a foreign armed forces allowed to enter one's territory is immune from local jurisdiction except to the extent agreed upon. So clearly, this was more the fiat or unilateral decision of President Duterte, and who knows what is the reason for that, than really using the GCTA, which was passed, by the way, in 2012. So clearly, the argument that good conduct or the GCTA was the basis for release of Pemberton has no basis in facts. Now, clearly, yung claim ni Paolo Duterte na he has an independent foreign policy is now even more questionable than ever, but this also raises big concerns about whether American servicemen or foreign troops will fully respect our sovereignty, knowing what happened in Pemberton's case. At the end of the day, if we want other countries to respect our laws and our sovereignty, we have to do that first ourselves. And as the Commander-in-Chief, President Duterte should not just talk about empty slogans of independence, he has to embody it in his actual policies. To be truly independent, we have to be independent from both interference and abuse of our sovereignty, whether it's from the United States or China. And that remains to be seen under President Duterte as he enters his final year in office. Ako po si Richard Hidarian. Stand with us, stand for truth.